With me to discuss these questions are Wim Wenders, the filmmaker whose work ranges from Paris, Texas to the Buena Vista Social Club. His exhibition of photographs, pictures from the surface of the earth, is currently showing at London's Haunch of Venison Gallery. Nick Cave, the musician and writer, has recently released Nocturama with his band The Bad Seeds. His music has also featured in several of Wim Wenders' films. Now, at a time of global conflict, violent images are bound to dominate the news. But violence seems to pervade the rest of our culture too. Films, television and pop music all dwell on violent images and stories. Are they merely reflecting a violent world, or are they adding to the problem by glorifying and inspiring conflict? Should art help people escape from the often ugly reality, or is escapism and solitude self-indulgent? Now, Wim Wenders, these images of violence are all around us, even the real world ones, if you like, on the TV news every night when we watch it, with war in the air. What effect is that having on all of us, do you think?
It prepares us, first of all. It makes it look inevitable. And it gives violence some sort of appeal. And the more we see of it, the more it has of that appeal. You see, we have violence happening to us in our lives. I mean, I had it happen a couple of times to myself. And then it doesn't have that appeal. Violence, when it happens, is ugly, sometimes very unprovoked. Out of us, it comes very sudden. You're never prepared for it. And afterwards you think you should have reacted differently.
What are the couple of episodes you're referring to?
I was once attacked with a knife and once with a gun. But these episodes were so different than anything I've ever seen in movies. And I acted so differently than I ever saw anybody act in movies, that I think the context of violence in real life is so different than the one we're used to in movies.
And what movies are giving us a false, almost easy approach to violence, make it seem easier than it is.
They're giving us a very wrong approach. They're making it look pretty sexy, and violence is ugly. And they also never show us the background. In life, violence has a certain background. It has a social background, a psychological background. There's a reason for it. And I love movies who show violence, who show me the reasons for it. But most of the movies leave the reasons out because they're not so attractive, and they just go for the product of violence, and that is a bad thing, I think.
Cave, your work is known as being full of, or you read any review, it's always about brooding and menacing. You've done a record called Murder Ballads. Violence in language or imagery is in your work. Are you worried that you're guilty of the kind of thing Wim is talking about, of making it look sort of packaged and less than it really is?
First of all, a lot of the violence I have in my music is comic. There's a sense of humour to it, and I would think people would see that. But also I acknowledge a violence within myself, and I think that it's violence isn't something out there, it's in here, and it's in us all. Even them.
He's backing off.
You know, and I think that it's necessary to be able to, you know, I feel it my duty, actually, to talk about the compassionate side of my nature and the violent side of my nature. And I do that within within the context of my art. I think we have a choice on how we live our life and how we deal with these impulses. But for me, my art is the arena where I let these impulses play.
Rather than acting on them in real life.
Rather than acting on them.
But when you said that if you're going to have violence in movies, you wanted explained and contextualised. I mean, what's your sort of rule on this? Are you now at a point where you're almost thinking, I just don't want to see violence on screen, or are you thinking, handled correctly, explained, it actually has a place on the screen?
Of course it has a place, because it has a place in life. As Nick explained, it has a place in all of our lives. And I don't know anybody who doesn't know the urge to sometimes become violent. And as long as the urge is shown with it, I like to see it in films. Like Taxi Driver, it's still one of the most violent films ever, even seen today, 20 years later, but it shows all the reasons, it shows where it's coming from. And most of the films today just cut it off, and on TV too. You see the war images, but you don't see the background to them.
What is the connection between the images that are made in a movie like Taxi Driver, or which we might talk about in your own film, The End of Violence, where you actually have a kidnapping scene, but it's about movies and violence, partly that film, and the kind of real-world images that we see? For the most iconic now is that image of 9/11.
I remember at least 3 films where I've seen the towers come down. And the moment when I joined the TV program, that moment when I stumbled into the room because I heard it, was when and I thought it was an animation that showed us what could happen. And it only sank in much later. And when it did sink in, I mean, I'm still working on it. I still dream about it. All my childhood, I had dreams of collapsing towers. For 20 years, I had recurring night dreams of towers collapsing, and there I saw it, and it slowly sank in that was happening, and I'm still dreaming of it ever since. So that was the strangest, for me, the weirdest thing that I ever witnessed, were these movie images, these digital effects that we continue seeing. I have friends of mine who produce these things. They make houses collapse every day. That's their job. And they don't know how to do their job anymore. They quit because they say, no, can't do it anymore.
Because the worst we imagined became real.
Yeah, and we were so strangely prepared for it.
Is this less of an issue for you because you deal with words so much rather than the visual image?
I think it is. I think that I deal in rock music, basically. And rock music is, you're kind of talking about a responsibility, and rock music by nature is supposed to be irresponsible. It's supposed to fly in the face of the status quo and society. But I mean, I think within the media where we don't see the good things that are done as well. Where the media is violent and obsessed with violence, and I think that there's another side to that.
But I mean, is that a media problem then, or are they feeding some kind of appetite that we all have? I mean, I'm always wondering about this thing where it's quite easy to blame the TV for putting on these images, as if somehow we're quite innocent and wouldn't watch them unless they put them on. But is there a human appetite for this?
Well, I think there is a human appetite for it. I know that exists within me. I know that. I know the way actually I feel when I see certain violent films. When I see a violent film that's done badly and it's boring and there isn't any morality beneath it, it's tedious. But I know that there is a part of me that is excited by it when I see it done well on the screen. There was a part of me that was repulsed by the violence of Taxi Driver, but there was a part of me that was
aroused by it in some way?
Well, no, I don't know about aroused by it, but certainly excited by it.
Yeah.
And
yeah, it's part of our contemporary world. You can't deny it. And as long as it is shown
it's part of our nature.
Yeah.
You know, it's a part of our nature.
Oh, much more than just contemporary. You mean it goes way back?
Well, I think it does. I think if we look at the Bible, we look at the life of Christ, for example, we see a violent tendency in Christ, a deep rage against things, as well as an incredible compassion towards things.
Because you've written, haven't you, about in fact you wrote an introduction for an edition of the Gospel according to Mark.
Yeah,
and one of the things that appealed to you about it was the way it's real and raw in its violence.
And human. And that's something that rather than that we reject this aspect of our character, we embrace it and try and understand it.
On the other hand, there is no more radical approach to violence than in the New Testament. And no more radical approach to aggression. And no more radical negation of it.
But you seem to be driving it in some of your films, and also in what you've been saying recently, at some kind of radical response to violence. I mean, even as a title, that a film to be called The End of Violence, and to have in it a producer of quite crude action movies who experiences a direct episode of violence in his own life. Are you, I mean, I know it would be a misreading to call that film a manifesto of some kind, but what are you driving at with cinema? Are you wanting a kind of radical response to violence?
That thing, I don't know. The title, in hindsight, was a mistake because it made the whole thing too programmatic, and people understood it on a first degree too much, and I regret it. I mean, I wanted it to be a film about violence and the interaction between the producers of violence, so to speak, and when it turns against themselves. So that's why I placed the story into Hollywood and had this producer become the subject of violence and which turned his life around. And in the end, he's like Saul is turning into Paul. He has he goes into negating it completely and just decides to have a different life. My problem is that I believe less and less that by showing something and you have the best intention to show your disgust or dismay, like a war movie, you have the best intention to make a film against the war. Images don't really carry the intention, they carry themselves. And any war movie, even those great ones, and if there are a handful of great ones, in the end perpetuate the idea of war. And the same with violence, you perpetuate the idea of it, even if you are against it.
Because people have always said about the Pentagon, for example, that those planners who staged this thing in the first Gulf War even, that looked like a video game where you were just dropping these things and there would be almost like a cinematic explosion, that somehow they had been desensitized by watching movies or playing computer games, and that had altered in their mind of what was possible and made war seem more possible. Is that the kind of thought you're having?
Yeah, it made war seem so possible that now you can actually plan it and program it and announce it and sort of create a whole new category of wars. The war in Iraq is a new category of war, and it will be the forerunner of many wars to come.
What do you think about the idea that we might not just have our own violent impulses reflected back to us through art, but that they are actually changing our mind? I know this is in some ways an old debate. Does it reflect what's already there, or does it cause it? But what's your view of it?
Well, I think that we're often blaming the reflection rather than the thing itself. There are deeper problems underneath all of that need to be looked at.
And if it's perhaps too easy to say to the filmmakers... Well,
as long as those problems aren't looked at, we're always going to be blaming the reflection rather than the thing it's actually reflecting.
Because, Wim, you've got this idea now, it'd be good to explain it to us, that there would be a different approach, a so-called cinema of peace. What would that be, or what would it look like?
If I knew, I'd sleep easier because I mean, just so happens that there is no genre of peace movies because it's more difficult. There is a genre of war movies all through the history of cinema, but there is no such genre as peace movies because peace in itself is, let's say, it's not so attractive and it might even be boring. And we try to conceive of a way to make peace a very attractive and wonderful thing to want and to watch. So we're trying to make this project, and it's not by me alone, it's by many filmmakers worldwide, to sort of create sort of an epic of peace as the forerunner of a possible genre of peace movies. So I thought we'd have to sort of work against this tidal wave of the other images.
How do you rate his chances?
Well, I think the problem with a cinema of peace is that they're unless it's gone about in a completely radical way, there's no storyline. There's no conflict. There's no violence propels the story, and conflict propels the story. It makes the air move. You know, it's motion and movement and progress actually.
And that there's no drama or story without conflict.
But I do know that with the cinema of peace, there'll be in a few years after it a cinema of ultra-violence again. Mm-hmm. You know, there will be a knee-jerk reaction, just as this is possibly a knee-jerk reaction.
What do you say to that?
Yeah, fortunately, if you look at the history of cinema, I mean, it never continued in a certain way. It always sort of reversed. And after not having seen movies where reality mattered in any way, I mean, the word real in the 90s was a four-letter word. It's slowly coming back. Out of a sudden, you see documentaries reemerge in movie theaters, and a certain need to see something else than fantasy.
What do you say to Nick Cave's main objection, in a way, that what would a cinema of peace be without violence or conflict? There'd be no story. It's what makes the air move. It's what drives us forward.
That's why I sleep so badly.
I don't think it's an objection. It would just be a great difficulty. I think it would be a great thing if it could happen. If you could sit down and and have a movie where you want to sit through it and you're kept in your seat.
Of course, conflict is at the root of many stories. Actually, it might be the originator of story is conflict. You can have it, but It's not.
So could you do a story without a conflict?
Because no, not necessarily without a conflict, but without violence and war. Yes, why not? I mean, why not think in new ways? I think our main responsibility as artists is to offer new ways to approach things and to look at things, and to change the way people understand things.
I want to ask something about how you both work as artists. I mean, Wim Wenders, you mentioned that some filmmakers almost can't think of anything anymore. They can't work because 9/11, September the 11th, outstripped their imaginations. Reality got ahead of their imagination. As an artist, do you try, Nick Cave, to screen out, if you like, the day-to-day and the news and the TV news, and just create a sort of bubble in which you can imagine your songs and your writing? Or do you actually feed off that?
I do. Well, I mean, I go into, I work in an office, and that's what I call my particular solitude, and it is an escape from reality.
So you don't have the TV news on, you don't listen to the radio, read the papers in the morning?
Well, no, I live out in the world, obviously, but when I go into the office, it's a place of solitude where I can get in contact or with my imagination and with magic and with God, and it's and I guess paradoxically that is my way of reaching out to the world. But I need to be in that particular place. I mean, I throw my songs out to the world, and they're kind of lifelines back out to the world, and I do go into this place of solitude with all the neuroses and fear and angst that I absorb out there in the world. But it's absolutely necessary for me to have that place of solitude.
What about you?
For me, it's the opposite. At home, I can't think of anything. I have to be out there, I have to be traveling, I have to be on the road in order to think of something. And actually, most of my films are inspired by traveling and by coming to a place and liking the place and realizing the place has something to tell. And then I just want to find out the story that this place has to tell. Most of my stories came out of places, and not the other way around, that I had a story and looked for a place to tell it in.
What do you make of that as an idea? I think that you're...
I think it's a wonderful idea. I think that that place is very important, but I also think that I think that it's your view of the place. I think there's possibly an arrogance in thinking that the place is something to tell to you personally. It's your own personal perception of that place, which is a story in a way. Because I'm referring to an article that I actually read about the importance of place over plot.
I wouldn't say it if I really didn't have the experience that I've found that places have stories to tell, and that they need somebody to pick it up and tell it.
You feel as if the place is bubbling and breathing its own story, and you just are the receiver of this story, rather than there you are and impose it.
Transmitter, or whatever you want to call it, the messenger boy.
But it's there already, the story.
I think it's there already. I think most stories are already there, and as artists, we are not modest enough to admit that we have found them. Most things that we do as artists is to find things and pretend we've created them.
This is intriguing because the two of you have collaborated together, and yet this is a totally opposite view of the creative process: modesty and arrogance, and
as modest people are most arrogant at the same time.
Of course, but the idea that it's there, and then you're saying no, it's something you have to...
Megalomaniacs with low self-esteem.
That you actually impose it, whereas Wim feels he uncovers it. These are very different approaches, aren't they?
Possibly.
Yeah. Hopefully. Hopefully.
I mean, you sound like to me, and that you have a different feeling towards nature. I'm actually, in regard to raw nature, incredibly intimidated by it, and feel that I'm kind of corrupting it in some way. Whenever, I find sunsets depressing and deserts intimidating, and the Australian bush downright terrifying.
Because it's spoilt by you being in it.
Well, somehow. I feel I don't belong. I just feel I don't belong.
For me, that was the biggest revelation in my life, was Australia, to arrive in the Australian outback. That set me free to become who I am. And it was the regional peoples, the indigenous people of Australia, who taught me the biggest lesson how to deal with nature and with places, which was you can never own them. You have no right to sell them or change them or what we do in our Western world with places. We sell them for a better price than we buy them. We do anything that we want. We dig, we change them, we put highways through.
We photograph them.
We photograph them, that's a good thing. But
that's okay.
It's okay if you, by taking the photograph, you don't have the attitude that you can take the place away. You can't steal its soul.
And anyone who's seen Paris, Texas knows about your connection with the desert and just letting it linger in our imagination, letting us just see it. But I want to talk about place, because you're both out of your place in a way. I mean, you're living in countries living in countries where you're not from. I mean, you're a German in Los Angeles.
I thought this was about violence in the art world, and now it's art in the violent world.
Oh, it is. I'm going to unfortunately come to something very violent, which is your relationship with Ground Zero. You went there in November of 2001, very soon after 9/11 happened. What was because these places that tell you stories, what did you take from seeing that?
I just did everything I could to get there and photograph, because I couldn't overcome it. I didn't know how to deal with it. As I told you, I dreamt about it every day, every night, and I had the incredible chance that I was let in with my camera, because there were no more photographers allowed. And Joel Meyerowitz, who became the mayor's official photographer in order to be able to continue day by day taking his pictures, and he has been doing it from the first day until the works were finished. He managed to take me in as his assistant, and I was interested in what has happened to the place. I mean, of course, there's many levels you can be interested in, and that can be a thing that you want to do, take pictures. But I wanted to see a place that was so wounded. How would that show? And how could I react as a photographer? And the unbelievable thing that happened to me on that morning was that I saw that the place was healing. And I took my photographs because I knew that that was something that had to be shown, that the place was actually healing. In the midst of all the terror and the horrifying hell pit that it was really, I've never in my life felt that I really had descended into hell like in mythology. And there, right there in the middle of the hole, I felt the place knew how to heal, and it was already beginning.
So this was a wound that was beginning to close over almost.
It was beginning to close over, and it was also beginning to show us how healing could be done.
But is that still your view? It's nearly, it's 18 months on, and what is your view now?
My view is still that there is an unbelievable lesson in there that we can learn from and that we can try to follow.
Do you think America is drawing that lesson from it?
My first reaction in America, the first few months afterwards, was that it had an incredible impact on American people, all over the world, by the way. It had an incredible impact of solidarity, and if you went to New Yorkers were tender with each other. There was a fragility. There was a lesson that was being learned, and that lesson afterwards became unlearned again.
You, I know, try and sort of insulate yourself in a way from these sorts of current events, but everybody has had their imaginations invaded by that event, I think. What's your take on it?
I mean, it's very difficult. For me, it becomes more and more difficult to keep that stuff out. And for me personally, I feel I have to be more and more vigilant about it. I mean, I was in the office the next day. I go into the office every day and write, and I was in there the next day, and it was difficult. It was, it was incredibly confusing. But I feel, for me, it's a matter of my own survival, and the creative process is extremely important to me, and it's a matter of survival.
Have you noticed, though, anyway, despite the vigilance to keep it out, that it has sort of leaked into your imagination?
Well,
and if it has, what form has it taken?
Well, I'm not sure.
Too early to tell, in a way.
Well, I can't go into my office and you know, and stand there kind of naked and be free of everything. You're not. I drag myself in there, which is what I was saying before. But I do feel a certain comfort of entering an alternate world of my imagination, where I create my own characters. There's a certain kind of logic to the way that they perform within the songs. They're largely narrative songs. And it's the same feeling. It's the same feeling as I got, and the security I got as a child, really. When I read books, there was a certain kind of logic to the stories. Not that I had and I would escape into that. Not that I had a bad childhood or anything, but it made sense to me.
But if I listen to your music, I feel there's a very strong urge for tenderness as well, and there is something that was always there but not so present, that there is like an outburst of positive energy and of love also in them, although you do sometimes describe the opposite.
Well, I would hope so, yeah.
Is this something you've noticed in Nick's work since September 11th?
Not necessarily since, but over the last few years it's very obvious for me. And for me, I think that was one of the necessary conclusions, was to concentrate on tenderness and to concentrate on positive things, and to concentrate on bringing something that I thought was beginning afterwards. Like, they pulled a lot of movies off the shelf at the time because they felt it wasn't the right moment, luckily. But it turned out they were just waiting until it was the right moment again. And my hope was that something more at the base had changed, but it didn't actually. Sometimes these historical chances to change something radical are not taken by the world, and that was one of those chances. Like the German reunification was a historical chance to change something in this country. The chance was pissed away.
All right, on that rather mournful note, our thanks to our guests Wim Wenders and Nick Cave.
If
you'd like to comment on the issues raised in this evening's programme, do log on to our website. It's at www.bbc.co.uk/talkshow. I'll be back at the same time next week, but for now, from me, Jonathan Friedland, goodbye.